So welcome to part 5 of the series I never intended to make. And this is where we're seeing if we can track down some of the cars that were sold off by Gaydon Motor Museum back in 2003 when they had a bit of a clear out of less significant exhibits. And this time we're going to see what we can find out about lots 47 to 57. So let's switch over to voiceover mode and see what we found out.
First off, we've got lot 48. Now, this was an 82 Rover SD1 Bastos touring car replica. It was sold for £3,680. According to the description, it was built back in period and it was up together but was lacking windows. Now, this car for me first reappeared in 2011. And at this point, its history had been dug into a bit. And reading the description, it turns out this was actually believed to be one of the first Tom Walkinshaw race cars. And they found plates for parts from TW001 and 002 on the car. Weren't sure which one it was, but turned out it was actually 001 because a chap called Ken Clark, who is known as Mr. Rover SD1, who actually built the cars for Tom Walkinshaw Racing back in the day, had actually found TWR 002. And funny enough, that had been painted in Bastos colours as well. And digging around for the full story is that when these two cars got to the end of their racing life, they were repainted into the following year's livery and then used as display vehicles sort of in hospitality areas and shows and so on, and then really forgotten about. And apparently this Ken Clark had looked at the Gaydon car and realised what it was because he'd found the Marlborough orange paint under the Bastos livery. So this car, the Gaydon one, has now been restored back to its original Marlborough livery, and it's currently on sale with Sam Hancock for a cool £175,000. So I would imagine Gaydon probably regret letting that one go. Lot 49, that was a 68 Austin 1800 that had been sectioned. It sold for just £598, and apparently after being used as a corporate show vehicle, it ended up with Staffordshire Constabulary as a brake reaction tester. And after that, I have got absolutely nothing on this one, afraid. I've done all my usual searches through images and so on, can't come across it anywhere. Sadly, this might well have been broken for spares. Lot 50 was a 1970 Range Rover rolling chassis. Now this sold for a reasonably healthy $2,990 at the auction. It was running and rolling. It had been used in Range Rover development and in a number of corporate films, but I can find nothing on this one at all. My suspicion, I reckon that went rolling under a restoration of a Range Rover, and it was a cheap way of buying a complete new set of running gear. Lot 51 was a one previous owner 1974 Wolseley 6 saloon. Now this sold for what I think is a relatively mild £1,725. It had only done 7,900 miles from new, and apparently was up and running, just needed a bit of a refresh. Now having a look on DVLA, it's still showing its tax, which is a really good sign to see. And MOT wise, even though obviously it's now exempt, it did have to pass one in 2006. And then it did go through in 17, 18 and so on. And it looks like it's only done around about 20,000 miles. So that one has definitely been loved. Searching around image wise, I found a picture by Leyland Bus going back a bit to actually 97 when it was still at Gaydon and alongside the later version of the Wolseley. And then finally I have found it in August 2018, pictured by Cliff Jones Photographs on Flickr, and it's pictured at a show. And unfortunately after that I haven't got anything more for that one. That was a 73 Austin 1300 Mark III saloon. Now that sold for just £1,092 at the auction, hadn't been used for a while, and it only covered 24,000 miles. Now interestingly, despite the fact it's a 73 car, it wasn't registered until 76, hence the R registration. So going to DVLA to see what's going on, first thing was, couldn't find anything. It said details couldn't be found, which is never a good sign. It did have MOT in 06 and 09, and at that point it had only done a couple of thousand miles more than what it had done at the auction. But if we whiz over to my car check and have a look for it, you can see the red bar there halfway down, write off recorded. And yes, unfortunately, a certificate of destruction was issued for that one on the 5th of October 2010. So that one is no more, I'm afraid. Lot 53 was a 1958 Austin A55 Cambridge. This sold for just $977 at the auction. I'm slightly bemused as why there's only a picture of it in the snow. I'm not quite sure how that came about. But it only done 60,000 miles and it had all its original paperwork with it. Now, digging around on this one, I can see from DVLA it is still taxed. So it's alive and well somewhere. MOT wise, it had one in 06 and 07, and after that it was probably exempt because it was pre-60, but it's only done a few thousand miles there since the auction. Now, that's it, I'm afraid, on that one. I've done all the digging I can. I cannot find any information on it anywhere, so if anyone's got an update for us, please drop a comment. Lot 54, now this is something you don't see every day. It was an 83 Range Rover which had been commissioned by Harrods. It was built by Wooden Picket. It sold at the auction for £6,325. Now, Harrods basically had everything possible you could think added to this car. It was spec'd beyond belief. And after the auction, it disappeared. Basically, apparently it went into a private collection, wasn't used on the road. So until it reappeared with Brightwells in 2015, it didn't get an MOT. It was back on the road, and it sold through Brightwells on that occasion for £20,000. Now, it reappeared a couple of years later with historic auctioneers, and this time round it sold for £40,320. So whoever bought it back in 2015 roughly doubled their money. Now, looking at DVLA for its current situation, it's on Sawn, so it's off the road at the moment. Last logbook came out in 2019, so could have been change of ownership, or it could just be someone's moved address. And looking at MOTs, it appears it's only been MOT when it's been going for auction. So that car really isn't getting a lot of use. And after 2017, I've not got anything on it, I'm afraid. So if you know anything, drop us a comment. Lot 55. Now, this was an 84 Mini 25 Special Edition. It only done 1,445 miles from new and sold for £6,670. It hadn't been MOT'd for a few years, but apparently was running and riding, so just probably needed a bit of a refresh. Having a look on DVLA though, not a lot of action on that one. Last time it was taxed for the road was 1989. And if we hop across to the MOT history, it's really not done much at all. Between 2010 and 2018, it's only done 7 miles, and I guess that's the MOT station and back. So after that, I'm afraid, I've really got nothing on this one. It's sort of gone to ground, so I had suspicions of museum or private collection in some form. Lot 56 was a 1960 Rover 100 saloon. Now, this sold at the auction for £7,130. Apparently, it was all up and together. It had been restored in the 80s, and it runs, but needed a bit of recommissioning. Now, we hop over to DVLA. That tells us it is currently taxed, so that one is alive and well. But apart from that, I've really got nothing on it. We know it's out there, we know it's taxed, but unfortunately, more than that, I've got no idea. So, as usual, get in touch if you know. Last but not least is Lot 57. Now, this was an 84 MG Metro, in fact turbo, computer vision BTCC car. Now, this sold for £8,050 at the auction. Apparently it was all up and together, just needed a bit of recommissioning. Now, this one, I've had it fairly quiet on this one. I found a couple of odd bits over the years, but the most definitive thing I've found is this listing on the Duncan Hamilton website, where the car was up for sale. I've dated this to around 2021. It's the same car, I've checked that all out, and it is up for sale for a fairly eye-watering £97,500. So I'd imagine that's one that Gaydon probably wish they'd kept hold of. I really hope you've enjoyed this video as much as we've enjoyed putting it together, and if you have, please give that subscribe button a whack, and in the meantime, have a look at this video which we think you're going to enjoy.